When we talk about World War III, and it feels like, everyone is talking about it, we have this movie script in our heads. There's a clear bad guy. There's a date, like September 1st, 1939. Hitler invades Poland, and boom, the lines are drawn.
It's clean, it's simple, it's that singular trigger theory. We want one moment where we can say that was the start.
But what if we're looking at the wrong war? We've got this source today, a transcript from the Sean Ryan show with a former military pilot, an expert named Michael.
Yeah.
And he makes this chilling point that we're not in a pre-World War II scenario. He says we're in a pre-World War I scenario.
And that changes the entire calculus. It's a huge difference.
Oh, so?
Well, 1939, you had a clear aggressor. But 1914, before the Great War, that was what historians call a tinderbox. It wasn't about one bad guy. It was this systemic entanglement. Everyone was sitting on a pile of dry wood, just holding a box of matches.
And that's the whole hook for this deep dive. We're not talking tank movements today. We're talking about what Michael calls the tinderbox. He actually argues the world right now is even more volatile than it was in 1914.
Because back then, all it took was one spark.
The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand.
Exactly. And the whole world just caught fire because all the conditions were already there. And Michael's point is that today, with the global positioning, the weaponized info, and what he calls a schizophrenic domestic situation here in the U.S., we are primed for a conflict that won't look like anything we've seen before.
So if the world is a tinderbox, let's figure out who's holding the matches. The source uses this analogy that I think anyone who's played board games will get. Risk.
Oh, it's the perfect analogy. Because Risk isn't just about the battles.
No, it's about the placement.
It's about where you put your pieces before the dice are even rolled. And right now, the source is saying the major powers are playing a massive game of strategic positioning.
And he mentioned some locations that, I gotta say, I didn't expect. I mean, we hear about Ukraine and Taiwan constantly.
Sure.
But he starts talking about Greenland and Panama.
Greenland is fascinating. Most of us just think of it as, a giant block of ice. But strategically, geography is destiny. It's the gateway to the North Atlantic.
Okay.
If you control the waters around Greenland, the GIUK gap, it's called, you control whether Russian submarines can get into the Atlantic and threaten the U.S. East Coast. It's not about the ice. It's about sensors and shipping lanes.
And then Panama. This is where he gives a little history lesson that I definitely slept through.
A lot of us did.
We just think of Panama as, well, Panama. But it didn't even exist as a country until the U.S. decided we needed a canal.
And this is that uncomfortable reality of great power competition. The source lays it out. Panama was a province of Colombia. The U.S. wanted a canal. Colombia was being difficult, so we basically engineered a secession.
We just helped them declare independence.
And then parked warships off the coast to make sure Colombia couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, that's a gangster move.
It's pure strategic positioning. But here's the link to today. The source brings up Venezuela.
Right. We hear about it with socialism or oil.
Yeah.
They have the largest reserves in the world.
They do. But Michael says the U.S. interest isn't just about energy.
He calls it a positioning maneuver.
That's it. It's a signal. When the U.S. flexes its muscles in Venezuela, it's telling Russia, it's telling China, this is our backyard. We can do what we want when we want. It's the modern version of parking battleships off the coast of Panama.
But there's a huge difference between then and now. Back then, if the U.S. did something sketchy in Panama, you might read about it 3 weeks later. Maybe.
If the government even let you read about it, information was slow, you could control it. Today, we've shifted to what the source calls live casting.
We are seeing this right now. We are live casting from Gaza, from Ukraine, from the streets in Venezuela, and you'd think that's good, that's transparency.
You would, but Michael argues it's actually a narrative trap.
What does he mean by that?
Well, the internet gives us all this raw footage, but it gives us zero context. We see a 10-second clip of a bombing, and we instantly build a whole worldview around it. But the algorithms are only showing us the clips that confirm what we
already believe.
Precisely. We're building cages around our own minds.
He calls it a kind of societal PTSD, and that really hit me. The psychological toll of having unfiltered war beamed into your pocket 24/7 with no real way to know if it's the whole truth.
It breaks down trust. That's the real casualty. You see conflicting truths all day, every day, and eventually you just stop believing in anything, the government, the media, your neighbor. And that chaos feeds right into the next big piece of this. the domestic crisis.
This is where the source gets really blunt. He calls the United States a schizophrenic country.
It's a strong label, but he's basically describing two different realities trying to occupy the same map.
And he doesn't just say, oh, politics are toxic. He traces it back. He points to the mid-1980s as the moment the immune system of American politics just started to fail.
Yeah, he specifically names the Newt Gingrich era. And look, whether you agree with the politics or not, the methodology changed. Before then, politics was, a negotiation.
We might disagree on taxes, but we both want the country to function.
Right. But in the 80s, the mindset shifted to warfare. The opposition wasn't just wrong anymore. They were the enemy.
It went from, I disagree with you, to, you are evil.
And when the other side is evil, you can't compromise. You can't build. You can only destroy. And that leads to what Michael calls the undo cycle.
This was such a perfect way to put it. He says, imagine the U.S. government is a corporation. A CEO comes in, has a 10-year plan, starts building. 4 years later, a new CEO comes in who hates the first guy.
And he spends his entire term tearing down everything the first guy built just to prove a point.
A company run that way would be bankrupt in a decade.
Of course. You can't advance if you're always hitting undo. But he says it's even worse than that. It's the death of the devil's advocate.
Yeah, this part really resonated. The idea that we've lost the ability to just argue, to understand something better.
It's his jury analogy. Think about a trial. If you only listen to the prosecution, you're 100% sure the guy's guilty.
And if you only listen to the defense, you're sure he's innocent.
The truth is usually found in that friction in the middle. But we've removed the friction. We're in our corners. If you play devil's advocate today, you're just fake news. You get shouted down.
Right.
And he does mention that people are hungry for a way out. He talks about tools like ground news, things that try to show you your bias blind spots. But until we fix that schizophrenic divide, we are just so vulnerable.
And that vulnerability is exactly what our adversaries are counting on. Because, and this is the really scary part, if a World War III strikes, it is not going to look like World War II.
No bombers over the horizon. The source makes a distinction that's vital. Kinetic versus non-kinetic warfare.
Okay, let's break that down. Kinetic is military speak for things that go boom, right?
Exactly. Bullets, bombs, missiles, tanks, that's kinetic. But Michael argues we're in the age of non-kinetic warfare now. Cyber warfare, economic manipulation, attacks on infrastructure. And his warning about the U.S. power grid is, well, it keeps you up at night.
He says our grid hasn't had a significant upgrade in 15 years.
Just think about that. 15 years ago, the iPhone was barely a thing. We are running the lifeblood of our entire economy on tech that predates the modern smartphone, and we're trying to defend it against AI-driven cyber attacks from, right now.
The scenario he paints is the kill switch. An enemy doesn't need to invade California. They just have to turn off the lights.
And it's not just the lights. He points to Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans as the case study. That wasn't an act of war. It was a storm. But look what happened.
Total breakdown.
Immediately. No power means no water pumps, no refrigeration for food, for medicine, no credit cards work, communications go down. The source says in a scenario like that, society just implodes within days.
And that connects right back to the schizophrenic idea. If the power goes out and we already hate our neighbors because of politics,
then we do the enemy's job for them. The source is convinced that countries like Russia or China aren't planning to occupy America. It's too expensive, too hard. Their goal is just to dump gas on the fire we've already started, trigger a grid collapse, and the civil chaos that follows, the implosion from within. It takes the U.S. off the board without a single enemy soldier on our soil.
That is a sobering thought. We're so busy looking for a Red Dawn invasion that we're ignoring that we might just eat ourselves alive.
Yeah.
But the source goes deeper into why we're so blind to this. He attacks the whole idea of American exceptionalism.
This was the real reality check of the whole thing. We have the story we tell ourselves that America is the safest, greatest country on earth. But Michael asks a very simple question.
Where do you feel safer walking down the street at 2 in the morning?
And his answer isn't New York. It's not Chicago or L.A. He says Tokyo or Istanbul. He says he feels safer in cities we think of as foreign than he does in major American cities. And he backs it up with the stats on incarceration rates, gun violence.
He calls it the empire critique. He sees the U.S. as an empire in decline.
And history shows that empires almost never fall because they're conquered. They fall because they rot from the inside. They fall when they stop taking accountability.
That word accountability, it's huge in this transcript. He argues there's a two-tiered system of justice and consequence now.
It's true. If you or I screw up at work, we get fired. A soldier messes up, they get court-martialed. But he says at the leadership level, political and military, accountability has vanished.
And he brings up a very specific, very painful example: the withdrawal from Afghanistan and losing Bagram Air Base.
This is such a critical piece of it. Bagram wasn't just some airport. Geographically, it was one of our only strategic footholds that shared a border with China. A massive asset for intelligence, for deterrence against our biggest rival.
And we just gave it up.
Abandoned it in the middle of the night. And he sees this as a catastrophic error. But his anger, and you can really hear it in the transcript, it isn't just about the base. It's about what happened after.
Did anyone get fired? Did anyone stand up and say, "My bad"?
No, and that's the exact phrase he uses, "my bad." It sounds so casual, but it's profound. When was the last time you heard a general or a president from any party stand up and just say, "I made a mistake, I was wrong, here's how we'll fix it"?
You don't. You get spin. You get gaslighting. It was actually a success, or it was the other guy's fault.
And that refusal to own reality is the betrayal. He mentions a book, Betrayal of Command. When leadership detaches from accountability, people lose faith in the whole institution. The military, healthcare, justice, the empire fractures.
So if we recap the board, we've got global adversaries positioning their pieces. We have a domestic population that's divided, living in totally different realities. We have a fragile power grid vulnerable to a kill switch. And we have leaders who refuse to admit when things are going wrong.
It feels inevitable, doesn't it? Like the crash is coming.
But Michael is a pilot. And he uses this concept from aviation to wrap it all up. He calls it the chain of events.
And this is maybe the most important takeaway. In aviation, planes almost never crash because of one single thing. It's never just the engine died.
It's a chain.
It's a chain. The maintenance crew missed a bolt. The pilot is tired because of a fight at home. The weather's a little worse than they thought, and then the engine dies.
The crash is just the result of all those links finally connecting.
Exactly. And pilots are trained to scan for that chain, to say, wait a minute, I'm tired, the weather's bad, I need to break the chain, I'm not taking off.
And Michael's warning is that right now, as a country, as a planet, we are forging the links of that chain every single day. The global tension is a link. The domestic hate is a link. The ignored infrastructure is a link.
And the really terrifying part is that the people who should be the pilots, our leaders, they aren't breaking the chain. In a lot of cases, they're actively adding more links. They're speeding up the sequence.
So we started this talking about WWI and WWII. We're not waiting for a Hitler to cross a border. We are sitting in a room filled with gasoline fumes, arguing with each other while sparks are just flying everywhere.
That's the reality. And if we don't recognize the tinderbox we're in, we're going to sleepwalk right into a catastrophe that we can't undo.
That's a heavy place to land, but I think it's the necessary one. And I want to leave you with this thought, based on everything we talked about. If the fuel for this tinderbox is the information we consume, the rage bait, the spun narratives, the refusal to listen, then we aren't just spectators.
No, we're participants.
Every time we share something without checking it, every time we dehumanize a neighbor for who they voted for, we're striking a match. So the question is, are we going to keep lighting them, or are we going to try and break the chain?
That's the only question that matters now.
Thanks for diving deep with us. Keep your head on a swivel and check your sources.
Stay safe.